It's 1077 The Bone, Baby Huey here, and joining me right now is someone that I'm super excited to be talking to, the director of a documentary film about the Bay Area zone, the matches. It's called Bleeding Audio. Joining me right now is Chelsea Christer. How's it going?
Oh, it's going as well as it can go in quarantine, I guess.
I I know that's the thing. It's like here we are. We're both at our respected homes right now, talking to each other. But yeah, that's life in I guess now 2021 now for recording interviews and stuff. It's the new norm, as they say. But I'm so used to it, and honestly, now I don't think I can go back to like the old ways of like recording stuff at the radio station. I have so much comfort at home now.
Right? I mean, like, why should we be forced to commute anywhere and like wear jeans when like sweatpants and our like cozy homes, the commute from bedroom to office. I just don't see a way of going back, really.
You can't see this right now. So like I had like my shoes on and I took them off and I was like, should I put them back on for the interview? Like, no, I'll throw on my Vans slip-ons. I'll throw those on. It's just for comfort right now. So, but no, thank you so much, like I said, for making the time. I'm super excited. This has been, I've been looking forward to talking to you for a long time, honestly, since when I first heard about this documentary coming out. And I do want to say, so as a member of 1077 The Bone, you have the best person here. I'm going to selfishly brag, the best person on staff to talk to you about the matches. And I'm going to, show off why. So first things first. So yeah, I do have the original CD of the self-release one for the matches. Their CD, their very first album.
At
I've got
that.
the Epitaph one. And then
So is that the release that has Superman on it?
yes,
Oh,
exactly.
that's some OG stuff.
But probably something I don't know. A lot of people might have the original, like an old locals
Oh
demo.
my goodness.
So
That is the original Locals EP.
yes,
Superman Treat Me Free, More Than Local Boys. Oh, wow. That is legit.
and
That is
yeah,
so legit.
inside they all signed it for me. This is back in like
Aw.
2002. So I'm showing you this right now. So Sean signed it and says, "Rock on, use the pictures. Thanks, man." So little backstory here of the matches, or when they were still the locals at the time. They were playing at Roosters Roadhouse, a venue here in Alameda, where I'm from, and at the time I was doing like a website, on GeoCities. Remember GeoCities back in the day?
Oh my goodness.
So like I
Oh
said, I'm dating
boy.
myself. I was trying to do like a website that like documents the entire like Bay Area punk scene, and that was the name of the website. It was like geocities.com/Bay Area punk scene. And I just got like a new digital camera, and I was going to all these different shows, different underground venues, from Gilman, Burnt Ramen, all these like underground warehouses and stuff. And I saw the locals at Roosters Roadhouse. I took a bunch of photos, and I asked them afterwards, after the show, they came off the stage and hanging out, and I asked them, "Hey, is it okay? I use photos for my website." And they're like, "Yeah, sure." And then when I bought the CD and they signed it, that's when Sean personalized it. And then actually, the proof of that night is I
More
have
proof.
photos from that night as well. This
Oh my
is
goodness.
like
Look at that.
it's like
That is
2002 right
so
there.
legit. Oh, 2002. That's
I mean,
amazing.
look
You
at
are
Justin.
like a little baby Justin, baby Sean, baby,
I
baby,
got
baby Huey.
yeah, I know exactly. Oh yeah, thank you. Yes, God, I'm like I think 18
Oh
or
my
oh no,
gosh, you
almost
can see the
19.
back of John's Trihawk in that photo. The red
Yes.
thing. Oh, and there's the front view of the Trihawk. Oh my, that
So
that was a look.
yeah, no, when I saw this opportunity to interview you, I was like, of course I got to. I have history here, and this documentary really just struck a chord with me in a positive way. Just it brought up so many great memories, and I have so much to talk to you about this. I love it, by the way.
Yeah.
Let's just talk about just the beginning of it all. So, how did this process? How did you get involved with making a documentary about the matches?
Yeah, I mean, I I met the matches when I moved to San Francisco for film school,
Hmm.
and one of our projects was we had to make a short documentary about something, and I was like, I want to make it about this band that I think is really
Hmm.
cool. And the guys, as you know, super generous, super supportive of young up and coming artists, and they were like, yeah, of course you can, yeah, yeah, film us. We don't
Hmm.
care. We'll be in town at the same time. That sounds great. So that's how I met them and ended up befriending them. And once the band broke up, like I kept in touch. I started doing some film work for John's projects, Bird by Bird, and a couple other things he was working on. And I, when when I caught wind of the fact that the matches were planned on reuniting, they told me, they were like, "Oh, it's our 10-year anniversary. We're gonna do a little reunion." I said, "Oh, that's gonna be huge. That's gonna be great." And they're like, "Oh, it's not gonna be a big deal. We're just gonna book, like, I don't know, maybe Bottom of the Hill's too big. Like maybe we should do Slims." And may Slims rest in peace.
Yes, I know.
And we'll just do one night and it's gonna be fun and like 200 people will be there. It's gonna be great. And I was like, "Well, no, it's gonna be bigger than that." I had big told you so energy there. But I said, "Let me help, like, let me promote, let me, my day job is I do a bunch of promotional videos. Like this is my thing. Like, I love you guys. Like, let me film interviews with you guys to help promote these reunions, because I think it's gonna be a big deal." And when I was interviewing them for these promotional videos, like I started to learn more about their story than I even knew. And I was just so captivated by their work ethic and about some of the ups and downs of their career that just felt so relevant and timely with how the digital age of music has affected musicians. Because while the matches had a lot of things working for and against them, kind of the beating drum of it all is that the industry was changing and they were still applying an old model to a new and changing industry.
Yeah.
And that's a big part of like where I feel like some of the disconnect happened. And I felt like that was so relevant and timely that it needed to be told. But also, I mean, like, there's such great, interesting, weird guys. Like, their music is like fun, and it's got like really smart lyrics. It's really unique. I feel like they were way ahead of their time, and so it just felt like a fun redemption story, but also one that could also act as a cautionary tale for up and coming artists today, and also hopefully inform fans of music the realities of what our musicians are facing in a digital age.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to go back to what you're saying, just how good people they are, good spirited people was. So that night at Rooster's Roadhouse, I'll never forget it. And this is what won me over. So Sean, okay, I guess I'll open up a little bit and I'll let people know this. So honestly, my mom passed away a week prior to that show. And I was like one of the first nights out for me. And some friends and I, we went to that show. So much fun. I was able to kind of just, forget everything that was going on. So much fun. And then, I saw them a few times beforehand. And so, growing up here in the Bay Area, my all-time favorite band's Green Day. I love Rancid, all that stuff, Op Ivy. And, I'm a terrible guitar player, so I didn't know how to play that well. But the way Sean was playing, as rhythm, doing like the ska, riffs and whatnot. So after the show, I just went up to him and was like, "Hey man, how do you do that style?" And so he said, "Here, follow me." And so we went over to like the side of the stage and he grabbed like his old silver guitar he used to have and play on stage way before the red Telecaster one. And he just started doing it for him, playing for me. I think it was an Op Ivy's or was it Rancid? But it was almost like, pick it up. Like it's just the way he was strumming along, and I was like, oh, and like a light bulb went off. But it's just the fact he gave me that time of the day when he didn't need to. I was like, you want me over? I'll support you. And once again, going back to I think like the overall like narrative of this movie, which is community and the fan base. And so, that's why I've always been a fan ever since. And that's like, what, almost 18 and a half years ago, roughly. So I mean, it's cool.
Yeah. Like, first of all, I'm so sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
What a thing to be going through at such a formative age. But it's also like, I have to add on to that thing about Sean that you just said, which is like, that's just how these guys were, is they genuinely cared. Like, it wasn't this inauthentic, like, I'm a rock star, you're a fan. Like, they were immediately your friends, and they were so, and that's like what my editor and I were really using as our fine-tooth comb at the end of this edit, was just making sure that we focused our central theme as community for this film, because arguably that's the thing that kept the matches successful years after their breakup.
Yeah.
But it's also something that's become so important for musicians to embrace, to be successful today. And it's not even about the success, like just the authenticity of the matches with their fans was so genuine.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a huge part of like what brought people to them. I mean, I grew up in Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
I was like an awkward art kid. Like I didn't know what was going on,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
like I saw this band that I thought was really amazing, had a great live performance. And then seeing them after the show just like meet and talk to people and like have actual conversations, like it has a huge impact because that's what drew me to the matches too, was the fact that yeah, I liked their music, yeah, I liked their live show, but I had also seen like tons of bands at that point like
Mm-hmm.
opening for acts and thought that they were really cool.
Mm-hmm.
But like what really sealed the deal for me and made me want to stick with them was the fact that they cared. They actually like spoke to me and like saw me,
Yeah.
like, and it wasn't anything malicious. It was just like, oh, you're an artist too, that's cool, so am I. Like,
Yeah.
it's like, I like doing creative things, you like doing creative things, you should do more creative things,
Yeah.
and it's like, oh, this is how I do it. Like, do you want to like talk about how you like do creative stuff? Like, isn't that cool?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's so real, and it's so important, is like something that we're obviously all missing right now being in a pandemic, is just like the
Mm-hmm.
community that music brings. Is it's not just about the art of music, it's not just about music, it's about like, you know about the people and the, either creatives or non-creatives, or just like having this place where you have something in common and you have common ground and you can
Mm-hmm.
like connect over that. And I feel like the matches were so good at embracing that and creating a space that was safe and could just open up conversation. So
Absolutely. And so a lot from that I want to jump into, but real quick beforehand. I remember when God, what was it, like 2013, I want to say? Or no, was it 2014? Where I think like the social media pages started being like activated again or something. I remember like people were like clues of like, oh my God, something's going on here. And, I started following along again, and I was like, trying to keep tabs on that stuff. And I remember they were doing like all those like little short videos for each song from the first album. So yeah, was that the stuff that you were doing first,
that was
which
me,
then
yeah.
led to the documentary?
Yeah, well, and actually, so I sat them down and I was like, here's my marketing plan for you guys. As I was like, since we're celebrating the 10-year anniversary, I was like, let's do little behind the song stories for
Mm-hmm.
each guy, for each track, and each guy would talk about each track.
Yeah.
And then I was going to do where are they now videos, and then like a general like, you know, let's talk about like just a retrospective of like our career. And it
Mm-hmm.
was in those stories, like asking them those questions about the retrospective of their career, where I was like, I think something bigger is happening
Mm-hmm.
here. And then
Yeah.
also like where they all are now. I mean, the matches are a unique case because like they all kind of landed on their feet,
Mm-hmm.
they've all figured out and have paths, which like arguably a lot of bands that break up in that time, like they don't have plan Bs, they don't have
Yeah.
paths, which is another story that I feel like is important to tell and recognize.
Yeah.
But I was just entranced by their story, and I was just like, I think this is a bigger one. And then when
Mm-hmm.
the spoiler alert, but then like when the shows sold out in seconds and then turned into like a national tour, like every other year,
Mm-hmm.
I was like, okay, this is something bigger. I'm gonna make a full movie about this.
Yeah. I remember like seeing those videos for the first time, and like, Sean, I haven't seen in like at that point like 5 years. I was like, whoa. Like he's got the long hair, and I was like,
That
whoa.
dirty hippie.
Yeah, like what happened to the guy who had like half the hair like cut or shaved? And I remember all those different styles, and I mean their whole look and wardrobe and everything has been like a whole amazing thing as well. But that's one thing. So I actually was able to see the matches at Leo's that year. I was able to get into that one, and
Little
so
secret warm-up show.
yes, exactly. Because I was like so bummed about I spaced or whatever it was at that time. I missed out on tickets to the Slim Show, and I was like, damn. But then I saw the announcement about Leo's, and I was like, oh my God, it's my opportunity. I was able to get tickets. I took my old intern at the time. We were going to the show, and it was so much fun. But I like how when they came out, Sean, in particular like was trying to recreate his hairdo, if I remember correctly. Like he put it up a
He
little
like
bit.
put it in a slightly messy bun.
Yeah.
It was medium successful.
Yeah, exactly. But then, when they jump on stage and as soon as Sean says, went into dog ear page, like for me, it was a time warp. Like I went back like over 10 years and like, oh my God. And Leo's, for anyone who doesn't know, here in the Bay Area, it's in Oakland, right next to the old location of iMusicCast. And so it just, took me all back to like just awesome times and
Yeah,
all
that
stuff.
was that was a special one too because so iMusicCast is a venue that the matches used to play at in Oakland. It was like a live stream music venue, which is hilarious given it was established in 1999 and
Yes.
YouTube happened in 2005. But they were live streaming shows like way ahead of their time. Really great idea.
Yeah.
And so Leo's is a venue that that opened up like right across the alleyway from
Yes.
iMusicCast.
Yeah.
So it was really kind of special that the guys were able to book like a little secret warm-up show. And they were, it was a mess in like the beautiful messy way that a matches show is, and it was a super sweaty show, and that was a good one. That's a good one to attend.
Yes, I got my vinyl that
You
night.
got your
well.
vinyl.
That night, so it's awesome. So
I love that you keep popping up like memorabilia here, and you're like, look at this.
I feel like Carrot Top. I got props everywhere. It's like, well, I feel like I got to do something different. Like I was prepping. I saw some other interviews that you were doing recently over the last few months. I was like, okay, what can I do that's different to stand out? So, but yeah, no, I was like, I have all these props everywhere. So I was like, spending hours looking for everything, make sure it was all there.
See some OG-ness though? Look at this.
Wow. Oh my God, locals, right?
I don't know how that cardboard cutout hasn't disintegrated, but there it is.
That's awesome. Oh my
God. An OG cardboard locals poster.
That's so cool.
It's pretty old.
So I definitely want to talk a lot about L3 just because I went through that myself. And so as you said, talking about community and just what the matches did. And I'm really glad you touched on this in the movie. It was brief, but you did talk about Gilman and just, what was going on at the time. And, for me, I'm around the same age as them. And so I definitely, from my own perspective, got the vibe and feeling of just kind of the little different scenes of music and, alternative and punk rock and underground music in that area. And for me personally, I always felt kind of like, I don't know, awkward's the word now, looking back on it. But I remember I would go to these underground punk shows, like gnarly people. Like I said, like Gilman at times, it can be very tame compared to some of these other underground spots, like in West Oakland or Richmond that I was going to at the time. And then I would go to shows like at iMusicCast, and it's a complete 180. But see, I love all that music. I love the hardcore stuff. I love pop punk. So for me, it was always like one weekend I'll be over here, I'll go to another one. And so I really liked, and I remember I was talking to friends at the time, or, I'm still friends with a lot of them today, but still, I remember at the time we would go to these shows and we would be like, yeah, it's really interesting. There's this one group of punk rockers over here, but then more of the pop punk crew over here. So it's really cool just how diverse everything is. And so I'm really glad you brought up how, the Gilman scene was one thing, so the matches went ahead and tried to start their own thing over at iMusicCast. And with that, like I said, I really respect, looking back on it now, how they were able to create their own scene with the L3. And it's just remarkable looking back on it now. I mean, just iMusicCast, the venue itself. So for you, someone, coming from Colorado, what was that? For your experience, for you, kind of research and learn about that scene, and kind of what were some of your takeaways from it?
I mean, envy.
Yes, yeah.
I grew up in a really small, I guess it's not that small of a town anymore, but I grew up in a smaller town in Colorado, and having a music scene wasn't really a thing.
Yeah.
I had to drive an hour to Denver just to see shows. And even then, a lot of bands skip Denver, it's kind of considered a B market, it wasn't really a thing where bands would come through a lot. And I went to one of my first live shows that wasn't 90s country music, and I was like, this is this is a thing I feel and connect with. The people here have a feeling that I like it's kindred spirits, I started to learn who I was and what I wanted to do. And you just you find yourself in these spaces. Like,
Yeah.
but what's really important about that is like having a safe all ages space for kids to be able to do that.
Yep.
And I think you know, being in an area where that wasn't something that was readily available, you know, like obviously researching L3 and learning more about it, I was like, this is amazing. I wish I had this. But likewise, you know, I think what the matches did was, yeah, I mean, Gilman didn't seem to be super receptive to them at the time. And that's, you know, that's fine. Gilman's their own thing. But I think what was like kind of cool of them is that they were like, okay, fine. Like, we're just going to make our own community centric space. And, you know, no, they were like, no harm, no foul, Gilman. Obviously, they were pining to play there, but they were just like, I guess, you know, we'll just make our own thing.
Yeah.
And I think like what was so kind of beautiful about that whole thing is that they were always super adamant that the shows were all ages, you know, that it was really important to create the safe space that was all ages. What helped to reinforce that, and I feel like make it a safe space, and it's not very punk rock, but you know, their parents would like work the door, their parents would work security, and it was a way for them to save money on the shows, but it was also a way for like other parents who are, you know, maybe not super cool with their kid going to like a, you know, gritty punk show, like to know that, oh, hey, there's other parents here, right? It's like chaperoned in a way.
Yeah, exactly.
Which, you know, again, doesn't feel very punk rock, but it was more about creating a space that was a community, and it was like anybody could be there, you know, and you didn't care, like you were just there to enjoy music. And something too that I always thought, it didn't make the film, but something too that I always thought was really important about what the matches did is they'd always have a high school band open the bill. Like it was always really important to them to like, even if the band was still learning and maybe really kind of terrible,
raw,
like it was
raw,
a little raw.
Green,
I like that. Yeah, very green band. But being able to give them like that platform, because that's so crucial, you know, like somebody has to take a chance on somebody, and what better to have like the matches who are like these stewards of a scene that they created, like create a safe space for bands to learn and grow, you know, and be able to have those bands get some practice and maybe hopefully jump up the bill a few slots, you know, like it's so crucial to like keeping a thriving scene is to like, one, give kids at a formative age a safe space to like, well, you know, try things out and learn about themselves, about music, about, you know, about art, about community, but also like for kids who like want to try it out, because who knows, like I'm sure that there were kids in the crowd who were like, hey, I want to be in a band, I want to do that, you know, and then for like them to start a band and the matches to be like, oh, hey, like open up the bill, like be the opening band. I mean, that's amazing for them to have the just like the like foresight, but also just the leadership to like create that for a community. And that's how you create thriving scenes, is it's like it's not just about the audience, it's about like also the, you know, the people who are trying to break into it and giving them opportunities, giving them a shot, you know?
Yeah, it was really amazing now as far as they were really the face of that scene, but in particular that venue and the bands from that. And there were some other venues in the surrounding parts of the Bay Area that also cater to a lot of those bands as well. So I remember going to like the Grange out in like Danville, like all these little different spots out here. But I mean, just all the other great bands that came up during the time, Street to Nowhere, Dessa. It was just so cool seeing like all these bands play together on a regular basis. And I was like, this is awesome. Like, listen, you know, for my age, I didn't grow up obviously like in the 60s and 70s with like the peace and love, you know, in the San Francisco hate and Ashbury stuff, or even the 80s with the thrash metal scene in the Bay Area as well. Late 80s, 90s, the punk rock stuff at Gilman, like in Lookout Records, all that stuff. So like the late 90s, early 2000s punk scene, or that was part of like the L3, I thought that was really cool. Like, you know, I did my best to enjoy it and live in the moment as best I could. But now looking back on it, that was such a tremendous time. And I'm so happy for this documentary just to really document that time period, because like I said, we're so lucky in the Bay Area, the rich history of music and all these genres that really succeed like every decade. And so to see this documentary and just really take me back to a really fun time period in my life and just a lot of great bands and scenes, it was just, that was so awesome. And, you know, I can't thank you for, you know, for documenting that. But I was just curious, like,
I mean, you could make a whole L3 documentary, honestly.
That's what I was gonna
And the
ask.
thing is that like Brian Matheson, who owned iMusicast and
Yeah.
also Skyline Studios, like he
Hmm.
still has all those tapes. So I strongly encourage somebody to go in deeper because there's a ton of content, and that was something that that it was hard for us to decide how to trim back the
Hmm.
L3 storytelling
Hmm.
because L3, it's it's largely a you kind of had to be there
Hmm.
thing, but
Hmm.
it's all on tape. So
Yeah.
like there is that opportunity to share it. And it felt like it was such a crucial component of the matches, like getting to that next level.
Hmm.
And so we wanted to give it the time it deserved, but we also recognized that we didn't want bleeding audio to alienate people who weren't matches fans, right? We
Hmm.
wanted people to understand the journey and carry it forward.
Hmm.
And something that I learned from a lot of the musicians that I spoke to for the film is that, local thriving scenes like that existed in tiny, like, time capsules and pockets all over the country.
Hmm.
And the Plain White Tees had their own little scene like that too. And I think, while I think L3 was incredibly unique and vibrant, like, I'm so interested to know what other scenes existed across the country
Hmm.
because I tried so hard to find it in Colorado at the time that I was growing up, and it was just I don't know, it was just like really disparate. Maybe I just was unaware,
Yeah.
but it's I feel like those are just like pockets of like culture that like help sort of inform other people's careers. I mean, look at you, like you are now in radio,
Yeah.
like I am, I'm a filmmaker. I made a music documentary, like these
Hmm.
are things that like are little seeds that were planted in our brains when we were teenagers,
Yeah.
like learning about music. And like I it's like it's always dizzying to go back and look at the dominoes that fall, but like you look back and you're like, oh shit, like did the matches knock over that domino? Oh my
Yeah.
god. Sorry, I
Yeah.
cursed.
No, that's fine. Totally
Okay.
fine. It's
Okay.
no, but I like you're right. It's just that whole time period was really special, and I think hopefully a lot of people who lived through that at our older ages really can like take a moment to reflect and like really appreciate just all the artists who perform, all the shows. I mean, like Zebrahead, performed
I
there.
know, right?
I did Real Big Fish play there
I
too,
think it
or
was a Real Big Fish side project that
Forces of
played.
Evil?
Yes,
I
Forces of Evil played,
Yes, I
but it
remember.
wasn't Real Big Fish explicitly.
Yes, because yes, I was there for that one. And it was Aaron had like the wig on and everything. Like it was. I remember seeing
I'm
it was
pretty
such
sure
a.
I saw that video.
Yes, it's such a trip. But no, I was there for that one. But and iMusicast, like I said, it was such ahead of its time as far as the streaming port. I remember like going to the back room where the computers were and people can chat with people watching. I mean, but in this
So
pandemic
wild.
now,
I
like
know.
we
Where's our
need.
music cast for us now,
Yeah,
right?
for everyone who can't perform in front of a crowd. I mean, it was such, like it said, an amazing venue at the time. And so I
Well,
just
I mean,
like,
it was a documentary filmmaker's dream too, because
yeah.
if it wasn't for any of that iMusicast stuff, like I wouldn't have had any of this content to show some of those early shows, even the embarrassing ones. Like some, like the fact that they have this entire catalog of all these bands like over this whole time. I mean, I know like some things are lost because they got taped over, but like a
Hmm.
lot of it is still preserved. And there were so many great bands, like you said, Street to Nowhere and Dessa, and like
Hmm.
all of these bands who a lot of the artists who are in them have gone on to do great things,
Hmm.
get Grammy nominated, I think,
Yeah.
somewhere. Like somebody produced something for 21 Pilots, I
Yep.
think, that is now Grammy nominated. I don't
Yep.
even know. But it's like it really did spark a whole like kind of subsect of music here. And yeah, again, like I would encourage a filmmaker who has more energy than I do right now to make an L3 documentary, because I think that would be really great.
I know. I'm
The
spacing the name.
content exists.
It was oh my god, the
Matt
producer.
Rad.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, it's so funny. Like I seen him and what he's done now, but it's like I remember seeing it when he used to play with Street to Nowhere for a bit, and like I mean, if you go to YouTube and type in Huey Cam Street to Nowhere, like there's footage that I filmed on my old family camcorder that I one day converted and I put on YouTube, and so like you said, amazing stuff. But like so with the content, obviously iMusicast, you had the benefit of a lot of that stuff on tape. I just love it, like when you started making this documentary, like as far as the converting, like how do you find all this stuff like outside the iMusicast stuff? like finding photos and videos? Do you
Right.
just go like look at hashtags for like the matches and just find all the photos you can find there and
I asked
YouTube?
a lot of fans. Like that
Okay.
was we did like a kind of in the early like kind of first or second year of production. I did a
Yeah.
call out to fans where I was just like, anybody got photos or videos that you can share me, please? All the matches parents have been very generous with their cardboard boxes of photos. And then we were very fortunate to have like interns
Yeah.
to help us like do a lot of scanning. And I mean it was relentless, and honestly like it got to a point where I had to like stop myself from getting archival, because there are gaps, because there's a lot of stuff like the matches weren't very good at taking photos and stuff, and like a lot of things are just lost to storage, and
Yeah.
I'm just tired of waiting or pestering people, and like I'm like there's tons of stuff that
Yeah.
still is probably out there, and
Yeah.
I'm not going to George Lucas this or anything, but like if something were to show up, I mean maybe I would swap out a few photos,
Yeah.
but it was again like a community effort. Like the matches parents were great. The
Mhm.
matches like gave me all of these like hard drives of stuff, and then fans just submitted tons of photos of like themselves or like videos of the matches, especially a lot of the like Como promo stuff where they're playing guitar out in the streets. Like
Yeah.
a lot of that was recorded by fans and sent to me. So yeah, it's just it was a mishmash, and honestly the archival stuff was the hardest part,
I
just
can imagine. Yeah.
because it's really it's one of those things too where I spent so much time recording all this really beautiful live footage present day,
Yeah.
and it's all like 10 minutes at the end of the film, and then like I had to spend like years collecting all this other content to cover the first like 3/4 of the film.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So a little frustrating, but like it is kind of the nature of documentaries that span many years.
I can imagine. So, making this documentary. So, like, going into it, like, we're at the 10-year anniversary of the first album, and, you're doing, like, the individual, interviews, the songs, talking about the song stuff, and you realize, all right, there's a bigger story here I want to tell for a documentary. Did you have in your head, like, the narrative already figured out, and you were able to kind of stick through it throughout the whole production of this, or over time you're like, oh my god, there's a different story here and let's change lanes and go this way? Like, just over the course of a couple years of this whole process, yeah, like I said, was there initial story that you wanted to tell but things change, or were you able to kind of keep it consistent?
It's kind of been a bit of a boomerang situation
Okay.
where I went into this saying I want to tell a beautiful redemption story
Mm-hmm.
of the matches. Like I just want to tell their story. I find them interesting as characters. I find them interesting as a band, and I think that their narrative is strong enough. Um, the feedback to that from people who I was approaching to collaborate with me was like, oh, like no one knows this band, it's not like you're not gonna be able to make a movie that people are gonna see that aren't matches fans, because I wanted to make something that would be appealing to the masses. And they're like, you had to make it a bigger story. So I was like, well, I mean, the digital age of music is a very interesting story. It means a lot to me. And I really I've been wanting to tell that story in different ways for a long time. And I was like, maybe I can use that as like a, sort of like a plot point map, like we can tell both stories. Like it can be almost like a case study where we're telling a story about the digital age of music, but using the matches as our case study, which is
Mm-hmm.
something that could work too.
Mm-hmm.
And like, what came from that assembly, which was assembled by my first editor, Jen Bradwell, who's Berkeley based. She also used to go to probably a lot of the same dirty underground punk shows that you went to.
Yeah.
Seriously. And she put this beautiful assembly together that had kind of the matches story, and then there were a couple like music industry excerpts that bounced back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
And it felt like two movies, and they were two very good movies. And she put together, I mean, basically everything, like the assembly that Jen put together, which was 2.5 hours long, is like the skeleton of it is preserved in the edit today. Like we changed very little with like how the outline of the story was. But we ended up kind of removing a lot of those music industry stories and only using it around matches milestones so that people could understand the time and the place that the matches were going through. And it could be, again, like this beating drum that sort of carried the matches through their careers. Like, this is what they're going through. This is what's happening while they're going through it. You know, and so while I went into making this movie wanting to make a story about the matches, wanting it to be like culturally relevant, but also like celebrating them as a band, you know, some of the back and forth, like of just like, you know, what's marketable versus like what's interesting. I like to think that I proved everybody right, like wrong. I was like, oh, obviously the matches are great. It can totally stand on its own feet. But it was like a lot of workshopping in post. And a part of that too was, you know, I knew the key milestones, and it was just about how do we kind of trim them or slightly reorganize them so they have more narrative weight, to make sure that we have something that is, you know, accessible and can, you know, go through the typical narrative arcs of like, say, a scripted film. And so it actually got to a point where when we were in the final stages of refining the edit, my editor and I actually used the hero's journey to like map our beats to make sure that we were following like a hero's journey, because that's really what it was, you know, is like the matches, like the ordinary world, the call to adventure, you know, meeting the mentor, like going through and the trials and tribulations, and, you know, getting into the darkest cave, and all of these things that are like very, I mean, oh my God, like I feel like all my film school teachers are like, it worked.
Yes.
But also it like was a very useful tool in it was between the hero's journey and then picking our theme for the film, because it felt like we had several, and the theme was community.
Yes.
And just making sure that whatever scenes were in the film, so long as it hung off of those two things, that's what would be kept. If it couldn't quite like fit narratively between those two things, like, does this scene show the matches getting closer or further away from their community? Does the scene show community versus like, does the scene show like something like relating to character development or the hero's journey? Should it be kept or removed? You know, like those are the decisions that we were making in the end. And you know, there were some Sophie's choices, but you know, it's a very long answer to say that like I went into it wanting to make a matches movie. I was told that I couldn't, and then you know, I was in feedback and just like in reviewing the assembly that we had, I was told again that I could, and I was like, haha, told you so. And then we went and refined it, and it was just a long process, but that's kind of documentary film, is like editing takes a long time.
Absolutely. Well, that's the thing. I mean, obviously I'm a little biased because I lived through a good portion of all that stuff, as far as especially like the first third of the movie, as far as the early days, and like I was trying to look for myself in some of the videos or not, but you're right. Like I think what came from this and what you made is perfect as far as telling the match's story. That's what's important. And I'm glad that it didn't end up too much of the music industry stuff, but what was in there I thought was extremely valuable knowledge, and it didn't beat, you know, in over our head over and over about this stuff. Like it was nicely woven in and out as far as telling the match's story, but then like, you know, other music references and industry stuff and how that, you know, relates to them and what they're going through. So I thought it was perfectly balanced, all that stuff. I love that. And so, and that's the thing. It's regardless if you don't know much about the matches beforehand, you will love them by the end of this movie. And then also, it's a great story. That's, I think at the end of the day, it's just the story that's what's important. I mean, there's been other great music documentaries of bands I didn't know much about, but watching it, I was like, wow, I'm so interested and intrigued by them by the end of it. And that's, I think, what the job of this, which is great. I mean, after this movie, you know, I was like, I want to go out and buy more music and support them as best I can. I mean, that's the thing. It was like, if anything, especially the younger kids, here I am, old man me now, but like for the younger generation who I think are so used of music, you know, just pay a monthly fee, or I think a lot of kids are probably used to getting it for free, or the ones who do pay a monthly fee can get access to everything they want on their phone, versus, you know, growing up of, you know, paying, you know, for the CDs or vinyl, whatnot. So I really hope that a younger generation sees this and really learns to appreciate artists out there and supporting your fellow musicians and artists out there for their livelihood in many ways.
Yeah.
That's what's so amazing about this.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, and that's the important message I wanted to, put through this without being preachy is that like, yeah, okay, yes, music is more accessible than ever, and
Mm-hmm.
that's so
Yep.
exciting. The
Mm-hmm.
fact that like I don't have to budget for my punk collection versus my ska collection, like I can have access to everything, and that is so exciting.
Yeah.
But it's also, we kind of now have this entitlement where we're like, oh, they're making art for us. Aren't they lucky that we're listening to them? Like, aren't they
Mm-hmm.
lucky that we're fans of them? And I'm not saying everybody has that attitude, but it's something that we need to like check in because like what we invest in our artists is what they will be able to invest in their art to give back to us. It's like
Okay.
it's a cyclical relationship,
Yeah.
it's
Mm-hmm.
very much like a give and take. And
Mm-hmm.
if we aren't supporting our artists, then they're not going to be able to stick around and make more art. And this applies to music, this applies to films, this
Mm-hmm.
applies to any kind of art. The advent of the internet is this amazing democratization of
Mm-hmm.
being able to have more artists like be able to promote themselves without requiring some you know like A&R rep discovering them, like
Mm-hmm.
they can make themselves be discovered. And that's amazing.
Yeah.
But as consumers, we just need to be more conscious of how we're consuming our art and how we're supporting artists. I did like a little like mini poll or something on Facebook or Twitter or something where I just said, what would it take for you to buy an artist's vinyl? What is like, how do you consume your music and how do you like support an artist? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I've asked a lot of questions like this too. Like, are you a fan of a song or a band? If you just listen to their single, like lots of different questions.
Mm-hmm.
But it was interesting where like people in their 30s and 40s who are more socialized to purchasing music are like, oh, like if I like a couple of their songs, I'll buy the vinyl, like I'll support them. Whereas like people who have not been socialized to buying music or items are like, well, I'd have to know them personally, like they'd have to be my friends and I would support them that way.
Interesting.
And it's
Okay.
like it's an interesting thing, which is like, well, they're creating art for you, so like they are kind of a part of your life, like like
Yeah.
they're your friends. I don't know, I'm kind of like rambling and venting now, but I think the main thing to be very hyper aware of too, though,
Mm-hmm.
is like especially currently given the nature of our world in this pandemic is okay, so artists' only form of income was now touring, right? And
Yeah.
that's a thing where like
Yeah.
as a consumer you see an immediate benefit of that, right? You're
Mm-hmm.
getting an experience, which is very exciting and a worthy investment,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But also touring is great, but
Mm-hmm.
the extent to which artists have to tour in order to make a living
Yeah.
is not sustainable. And it's I just think it can cause mental health problems. It
Yeah.
can cause all kinds of like health issues because musicians don't have like backup pitchers. You know what I mean? Is like
Yeah.
you can't have a new lead singer come in,
Yep.
like they're just losing their voice, or they
Mm-hmm.
have to cancel a tour, and that's an entire income. And the extent to which musicians have to tour is, I don't think, the solution. And it's just about being able to find a way to monetize their art again, because
Yeah.
basically everything but the music makes money for artists, and that
Mm-hmm.
doesn't make sense,
I know. Yeah.
and like streaming payouts. I think the only positive thing that came out of our last administration was the Music Modernization Act, which
Mm.
was basically it was just like I'm gonna butcher the details, but basically just trying to raise like streaming royalties up by about 40% for the artists, which would be
Wow.
huge.
Yeah.
But guess all the streaming platforms appealed it, right? So I think that it's still going to be a battle. I don't know what the current status of it is.
Okay.
I've been a little distracted by the other burning fires around us.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I think what the pandemic is exposing is that touring was the only income musicians had.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of musicians are not going to be musicians after the pandemic because of no longer having a touring income, which is very scary.
Yeah.
But what's even scarier than that is like going back to what we've been talking about, which is having safe, all ages spaces or independent venues
Mm-hmm.
for up and coming bands to play, so that, you know, kids like you and me who have been able to build a career off of like being excited about this,
Yeah.
we're able to like learn and grow and have community, you know. And like those venues are starting to close. Like it was already, you know, kind of happening in San Francisco for other reasons.
Yeah.
But like, you know, the pandemic is risking us losing those venues and those event workers that would then create spaces for artists to tour and make money. So it's all falling apart. And I'm not trying to sound like I'm pulling all the alarm bells, but like I think it's just very important for us to maybe take a step back
Yeah.
right now during this pandemic and think, what has gotten me through the day to day? And you realize it's probably music.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe buy a vinyl record instead of just paying your subscription fees, you know, like
Yeah, no,
or
you're
a
right.
t-shirt or a coffee mug.
Exactly.
Like,
No, I mean, you know, like back during the late spring and summertime when this pandemic was still new, and on the air, we were trying to do our part, spread the word of like, okay, your favorite restaurant or even band, whatever it may be, you know, buy a gift card, or if it's your favorite band, buy a t-shirt, buy the vinyl, buy the physical copies and whatnot. The local venues here, we were trying to raise exposure for as well. It'd be like, you know, I know, like I saw Bomb in the Hill was selling t-shirts, and we were encouraging people, hey, go buy a t-shirt. Every little penny helps. There's a GoFundMe, contribute. I mean, these venues are extremely important, especially the independent ones, just because the next generation of you and I are maybe out there right now. They're teenagers right now, but if they don't have a venue to go to down the road after this is all gets better and home back to normal, then the music scene kind of dies down here in the Bay Area, and that's what's scary. And but yeah, I mean,
so scary.
but this documentary, if anything, reinforces, I think, yeah, the values of community, a music community, and it really just, you know, hit home with me with that one. And maybe
Thank
just
you.
like, yeah, like, you know, going to shows as a high school kid and college kid, and then maybe want to do college radio when I was at Cal, and then when I got to Cal, I want the internship at the radio station. So it was just like the domino effect of a powerful music scene can really motivate and lead to like some fun careers like you and I. And so, like I said, I cannot stress just how important to see this movie is and whatnot. You were talking about a lot of the great guests that you had. You know, you had Nick from 311, Mark from Blink 182, also Tom from Plain White Tees, and a lot of other people. Was there anyone that you wanted but you couldn't get into the documentary?
Tim Armstrong.
Oh, dude, see that was.
I know, I really wanted Tim Armstrong, but it was mostly just because I heard that they had such a wonderful experience working with him, and
Okay.
I also, like, you know, he's an East Bay guy,
Yep.
and like I really wanted to talk to Tim about like that experience with Gilman, and just kind of talk about like if he had witnessed any L3. But he was the only interview where I was kind of like bummed that it didn't work out.
Mm.
But otherwise, like I'm really happy with the people who participated.
Yeah, yeah.
I feel like we have some great perspectives.
Yep.
I mean, Nick Hexum was so nice. He loved the matches. Like
Yeah.
I was really surprised.
Yeah,
He
yeah,
was
yeah.
like, he was a huge fan, and especially of Sean too.
Mm-hmm.
He told some great stories about working with Sean and just being like, just kind of in awe of him, you know. And Mark Hoppus too was so insightful. I mean, I think what was really great about the Mark interview was the film had already been edited mostly, and so I was able to go into his interview knowing a little bit more about what I wanted exactly.
Oh, okay.
So that was an interesting experience as a filmmaker. But likewise, Mark had a whole just like wealth of information around the changing industry and a perspective on it that I felt like was so relevant to the matches. But yeah, because he is like developing a ton of artists right now, you know.
Yeah.
Like he's working in development and like actually like constantly kind of cycling through and trying to like get bands out there. And so he is very close to that story, and so he had a perspective that was so valuable. I mean, honestly, I think the Mark interview, we had set aside an hour, and I ended up only needing like 35 minutes because he just like answered all the questions. And I was just
awesome.
like, I was like, I want to ask you more things, but like, I only have so much time left in my movie. And, you know, like,
how's your day going?
Yeah,
like,
you know, but he had nothing but wonderful things to say about the matches too. I mean, I think that was the most wonderful thing about like speaking to these people who are like leaders in the music industry,
Yeah.
especially in the late 90s, and to have them reflect on their experience with the matches and just with such glowing praise,
Mm-hmm.
and just seeing that as this mark of, what a wonderful band they were as
Yeah.
like people, as creatives. And yeah, it, like, the bittersweetness of that is just being like, like they should have made it big. But on the other side of that argument, each guy has established such a great life for themselves now.
Yeah.
And they, yeah, like they kind of got something better, which is just something that's like much more tight knit in a way.
Yeah, and I was just amazed at how well they've seems to be like on good terms and friends, and more or less had the same lineup for those peak years, other than towards the end, and so it's really amazing that even like to this day they seem to be all, like I said, good friends and stay in touch. I know like today, like the reunion shows, for each album, like celebrating the 10th anniversary of each respected one. Do you know kind of like what is next for the matches? Is there any plans for anything else? I mean, I just because I know like hypothetically a lot of bands
Yeah.
have regular 9 to 5 jobs, and maybe these bands that they used to be in, they kind of maybe only play like a handful of shows throughout the year, here and there, like on a set aside a weekend here and there. And the matches seem to kind of were doing that for a few years. Is that something they still kind of? I mean, from your perspective or knowledge, is that something they kind of want to keep doing?
Well, I mean, the plan was to premiere in 2020 and
Yeah.
do like some live shows in
Mm-hmm.
conjunction with a lot of these film festival events,
Yeah.
and almost turn that into like their version of this tour.
Mm.
They were 100% intending on playing shows in 2020.
Okay.
So right now, I mean, it's really a matter of just waiting until it's safe, until it's safe. Because I know that, they do want to continue doing part-time shows. They do, like, they love connecting with their community. They love connecting with each other. And yeah, I don't know how much else I can say, but I know that they've been very creative in the time that they have. But
Okay.
also, like, they're, the lives that they have now are very demanding. Like,
Yeah.
Sean is now a very successful child book illustrator, and
Right.
he's like,
Yes.
he's killing it, and it's like his art is great.
But the
Yeah.
space cat thing, like I see on Instagram,
Oh yeah, yeah.
right? Like, and
So great.
but like, his buddy Mark, the writer, I see
Yeah.
like he does like the theme song for him. Like it was like, what?
I
Like,
know.
it's amazing. These guys I saw back in the day, and they're doing like these cool other jobs now. I mean, it's just creatively the artistic side of them. I'm so happy that they get to do this still.
Yeah.
I mean, I know you've been so generous with your time. Just a couple things real quick. Also, so you're talking about like the film festivals and stuff. So what is kind of next for you? I know there's a festival in next month in February, right? That you're gonna be a part of.
Yeah. So this is very exciting for us. So we, without trying to be too long-winded here, we did have a world premiere
Okay.
on March 7th, 2020.
Oh my God. Like when
Yeah.
I heard you mention that in another interview, I was like, what? Because
Yeah.
I remember seeing on Facebook some people I know who went to that screening in San Jose, right? Was that the one
Yeah,
in
it
San
was
Jose?
in San Jose.
I was
We were
like,
so scared it was going to be a super spreader event, and it wasn't. It wasn't. It
I know,
wasn't
'cause, well,
really enough days.
I connect that because March 6th was the last thing myself and a bunch of my coworkers, we saw Chris and Rich Robinson, the Black Crows, play at the Chapel, a little private
Oh,
show. But
that's dope.
yeah, that was awesome. But we all joked that was the last time we were all like in the same room,
Yep.
public gathering,
Yep.
actual live show.
Yep.
And ever since then, the normal's been gone. So
Yep.
when you said
So-
March 7th, I was like, I know exactly that weekend. That was the last fun
That
weekend.
weekend was so scary because yeah, it was sort of this quiet hum of terror because
Yeah.
one of the most major music and film festivals, South by
Mhm.
Southwest, canceled completely like
Yeah.
3 days before.
Yeah.
And I'm just so devastated for those filmmakers. But our premiere was still scheduled as planned, and it was
Okay.
the morning of our premiere that the festival announced that they were shutting down, starting like effective Monday, that they were going to keep their weekend screenings and
Okay.
that they were shutting down on Monday. So we had a sold out screening,
Yeah.
but I'd say it was probably about 70% capacity, which is still pretty good.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, we went in being like, okay, we'll just be really careful. I was like, no hugs. I hugged every person in
I was
that
gonna say
venue.
fist bumps only.
Like they're just I started with like the elbow bumps, and then like honestly, within like 3 elbow bumps, I was like, come here.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
like
yeah.
I look back now and just and then we also did like a little secret show. The matches, we took over this little brewery right down the street from the venue, and the
Okay.
matches played a secret show, and
Yeah.
it was the world premiere that I had always dreamed of.
Yeah.
That was unfortunately under the cloud of a pandemic, but it was wonderful. And then like everything shut down,
Yeah.
and we kept the film on hold because we just weren't sure how we wanted to handle things going forward. Do we do virtual festivals? Do we wait? We ended up doing some virtual festivals in the fall of 2020 that were really fun and not the same, but like they did a really great job engaging filmmakers. And then we found out late last year that we were selected for Slam Dance 2021, which is huge. It's one of the biggest independent film festivals. It's one that I've always admired, kind of, nearby and from afar. I'd been volunteering for the Sundance Film Festival for like the last 11 years, and Slam Dance happens the same week in the same city, because they're like, I call them punk rock Sundance because they're like legit indie, and they happen in the same city. And I've attended several Slam Dance screenings over my time too, and I just love that festival. And so it was so special to be selected, and we're so honored. But what I think is really cool about what Slam Dance is doing this year is they're really making it hyper accessible. So the passes to access their entire catalog, their entire program for the whole festival are $10. And so what would normally be like $10 or $15 a ticket, like you can watch all the Slam Dance films, including Bleeding Audio, for only $10.
Really? Okay.
Which is really great. And it's like they're so focused on making sure independent cinema gets seen and heard. And I'm really excited and honored by the programming. It's a huge thing for the film. It's a huge thing for me and my own career as a filmmaker. And I'm just like so humbled by it. And we also have a few other festivals that we're going to be announcing soon that are happening after Slam Dance. That are more regional.
Cool.
But yeah, it's been a wild, journey. It's been really hard not, seeing the film in theaters with an audience, because that's the energy that I've been craving for the past 6 years that I've been working on this this gosh darn film. But like it's still been really great, and I'm just honored that people are even watching it. So
I mean, I cannot wait. Like, I'm with you. Like, I got to see it here at home, but it's like I want to see it in front of my fellow peers and fellow L3 attendees, and all live through this moment together. So hopefully, fingers crossed, things will kind of get back to normal. I know things are in progress of changing here in the country, but hopefully by late spring or summer we can like get back to more of like the movie screens again and whatnot, concerts, all that stuff. So hopefully we could do a make good here in the Bay Area, and I think I encourage all the listeners right now, when that does happen, go to that one.
Oh, I'm already plotting.
I was going to say, it's got to be
I'm trying so hard to make sure that we have something like a big, return.
But like a big, like everyone like cheer specifically for you, Chelsea. Like, you're the director all the time, and it's like this is your baby project for so long. So, so other than the virtual festival, so bleeding-audio.com is the website, right?
Yes.
With all the info, social media as well.
So Instagram is at Bleeding Audio Film. Facebook is /Bleeding Audio Film. And then Twitter is bleeding_audio.
Yeah, gotcha. So
and
follow
those
along.
are all the socials. Yes.
Yeah.
And you can also sign up for our newsletter on our website, I think.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, with the updates and everything, but yeah, Slam Dance, that seems like a great deal. Like what, $10-15 you said?
It's $10 for a pass for the whole festival. It's really amazing, and it's exciting too, because a lot of the films are super baby indie films by,
Mm,
you know, by super talented people. Like I'm looking at some of these like films that were programmed alongside, and I'm just in awe, you know, like I'm so grateful to be a part of this, you know, collection of talented filmmakers.
mm-hmm.
But it's like a lot of, at least personally, a lot of my favorite filmmakers got started there, like Lynn Shelton, you know, Christopher Nolan, you know, some what are those directors? The Russo brothers got started at Slam Dance, so you know, it's
What?
like it's
Oh my
really
God.
cool to be like kind of getting started at this fest for 2021. It's a great start to the year.
Oh my God. So maybe you'll do a Marvel movie down the road as well. I'm a big
Oh,
Marvel fan.
yeah, I'll let Kathleen Kennedy and the Marvel and Kevin Feige know.
Yeah.
Like, I'm definitely available. You know, if they're interested.
Or Disney
Like, I,
Plus.
I just did a shoot where I had a tennis ball on a C-stand, so I'm like super experienced.
Exactly.
So they can hit me up. I'm happy to come. You know, I can workshop some scripts. Like,
Yeah.
I'm available. I'm
That's all.
interested.
Can I just be like a stand-in, like a fill-in? You know, I just want to be in like
Of
back
course.
of
Yeah,
like
yeah, of
Captain
course.
America or something.
Yeah, it's great.
No, but listen, no, thank you so much for making the time today. I really appreciate it. Like I said, this documentary has been on my radar for a long time. Going back to, like I said, the reunion shows, and then when I remember like the Kickstarter thing happened a few years ago, and I was like, oh my God, like this is something I've been waiting for. And just like I said, it like I said, I'm biased. Like I said, documents a great time period in my life that I've lived through, and you know, it just really brought back a lot of great memories. And I think a lot of people, regardless if you live in the Bay Area or not, you're really gonna enjoy this story about a band and just the music industry and just the values of, as you said, the community, the authenticity, but also loyalty as well. That was a big thing, loyalty that was talked about.
That was another thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
at you know, very much at the end, just a lot of the surprises and things we learn. It's like, oh my God, just
It's a
I got
roller coaster.
I
Bring
got
some
getting
tissues.
goosebumps just thinking about it
Oh,
again. Like I
thank
said, no,
you.
thank you for making this movie. I mean, is there anything else coming up for you that you want to promote that you're gonna be working on next that we can keep an eye out for?
Ooh, that's a good question. I have some scripts. Like I originally came from the narrative world.
Okay,
Documentary is something that I very much love. Would love to go back and work with actors, and I have a few scripts that I'd love to get produced. And so who knows? Maybe I can be working on that sometime this time next year.
awesome. Well,
Great.
fingers crossed for you. And like, please, if
Thank
you
you.
need anything else, I mean, just know, yeah. Baby Huey is your local in-house Bay Area rep for anything mattress related, music related, all that stuff. But no,
Oh,
thank you so much for making time, and hopefully, yeah, we could celebrate in person in the near
oh yeah,
future as well. We're
it'll
both
happen.
Bay Area based. Awesome. Thank you
It'll
so
happen.
much.
Thank you so much. This was so great. I really appreciate it. Thanks for having
Thanks.
me.